Another reason to not get too attached to your diagnosis is if you look at the work of Claude Steiner. Claude Steiner, in one of his books, had an objection to psychological or psychiatric diagnoses. Among other things, what he said was if you look at the way a mechanic diagnoses a car, the mechanic knows X diagnosis, I take this part out, put that part in, job done. People don't really work like that. For example, let's say you're diagnosed with autism. No two autistic people are the same. So, the way one autistic person is treated and it's beneficial for them, that might be harmful for another autistic person. You've got to take the person as they come, with their own uniqueness, their own personality, their own needs. Something else that you mentioned was the person being diagnosed is rarely consulted about their opinion on the diagnosis. And I've personally seen where this has been harmful. Someone is all this on paper, but actually there's something completely different. It just has some similarities to what they've been diagnosed with. So they're getting all this support. Maybe they're even on medication, but the help they really need is way over this side where the person diagnosing them didn't think to look. And we make mistakes, but the person being diagnosed also wasn't consulted. Almost to say, you're not smart enough to think through the information for yourself and to make a judgment. I work with a lot of autism, so here's some documented examples. Some people who have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder actually were autistic. Again, autistic. Some people who have been diagnosed with anorexia nervosa actually had ARFID. Getting the wrong treatment for the wrong thing, maybe sometimes even wondering, what's wrong with me? Why isn't this working? Can you imagine if those people, among how many other diagnoses there are, internalized that and took that on as a whole identity, and it turns out they don't even have that thing? Something else Claude Steiner mentioned was that diagnoses were being elaborately hidden from subjects, uh, basically because it was assumed that they wouldn't really understand the diagnosis anyway. And at least he was big enough to say, after his years of training, he didn't really understand some of the diagnoses. And he said, even if you get a group of psychologists or psychiatrists in a room and they agree and say, this is the diagnosis, guess what? They're all probably going to differ in how they think you should approach the diagnosis anyway. And he said, when they have to work together, they tended to gloss over their differences in thinking, maybe because it was embarrassing for them to highlight, or maybe I'm wrong about this, or maybe. I guess what I'm pointing to by highlighting that part of his argument is you ultimately are the expert on you. I think therapy and other helping professions in that vein becomes harmful when you start to view yourself like you're less than. Like the psychologists and the people with these diplomas and degrees are this all knowing entity, and you don't even have the resources to understand your own experience. Maybe you do need help, that's fine. Maybe you don't have a name for what you're going through, that's fine. But to completely disempower yourself and act like you know nothing of your own experience and you take on whatever's given to you or whatever you're labeled with, you could really be selling yourself short.